Pursuers, Chapter 3, First Part. The manner of barring the main entrance varied in each town and village, but in McRory it was a palisade of thick tree trunks sunk side by side. The gates could slide back to the fence on either side, and Dee turned to the one on the right and pushed it in, entering the opening it left in the great palisade around the town. Once through the gate, he commanded an excellent view of the main street, and the homes lining either side of it.
"No smell of blood. That's odd,"
the hunter's left hand murmured as it gripped the reins. It sounded as if it would have had its head cocked to one side. "Of course, there's no signs of anyone either," said Dee. Beneath the black brim of his traveler's hat, his eyes held a quiet gleam. His horse didn't halt. On encountering a weird situation, it was normal people who felt an urge to kill. Once through the entrance, the horse and rider started down the main thoroughfare, swaddled in stark sunlight. Not a single soul was on the street, and the hunter rode with it so much as a glance at the rows of houses to either side, his steed not stopping until they were in front of a saloon. Dismounting, Dee tethered the horse's reins to a post.
"No one's here,"
the hoarse voice was heard to say once the hunter had pushed open the door. The quiet interior of the establishment bore out the hoarse voice's words. However,
"There were people here about an hour ago,"
the hoarse voice continued.
"There's nicotine and alcohol in the air."
Dee looked down at an ashtray on the table. A cigarette had fallen from it, burning the table and leaving a long strip of ash in its shape. Most of the tables had glasses and cards on them, though a few had been overturned, spilling their contents. Following the path of the disturbance, the hunter saw a broken glass on the floor and a half-dried puddle of alcohol.
"There's half a steak here, with a piece of it still stuck on the fork. In other words, something happened just as they were taking a bite. Something that made them drop their glasses and cigarettes."
Dee twisted around to face the door. That was the direction most of the chairs pulled away from the tables faced. The patrons had pushed their chairs back and risen to face whatever had come through the door.
"There's no smell of gunpowder. Somebody might have drawn a sword, but it looks like most of them accepted their fate without doing a thing,"
said the hoarse voice. Dee went over to the bar and looked behind the counter. A double-barreled shotgun still sat in the customary place. It appeared the bartender hadn't even had time to go for the weapon. "What came in?" The hoarse voice didn't answer. Dee went outside.
"What's this?"
the hoarse voice exclaimed, sounding intrigued. There was no sign of the hunter's saddle horse.
"That's no small feat, taking that horse without you or me noticing it."
"You're the one who didn't notice."
"Huh?"
"A formless presence is on the move. It came from the center of town and got rid of the horse."
"Where'd it go?"
"Back where it came from." Page break. In less than 5 minutes' time, Dee stood in front of an old cylindrical building, a theater. Though entertainment on the frontier wasn't as rare as those in the capital believed, anything culturally redolent of the capital was restricted to the traveling plays and concerts that might visit a few times a year. It was easy to dismiss those who constructed such theaters, both large and small, as bumpkins or pretentious posers. But in a theater much smaller and simpler than this, In a community far more isolated than this town, one Una O'Connor, considered the world's greatest violinist, had packed the house day in and day out, from the time he was a child. He referred to the boards of that theater's wood-plank stage as his parents. The front doors had been left wide open, and he passed through one of the many doors set in the wall within. This had to be the theater's stage, a stone floor about 30 feet in diameter. It was surrounded by stone seats that radiated out from it, and climbed gradually to a height of about 15 feet. On the frontier, theater was like a drug that people had a love-hate relationship with. The genius playwright Ox had worked for the nobility, penning the series of plays called the Aristocrat Saga, in which any nameless hick actor could deliver his lines in a monotone, and the seasoned audience members would still offer up thunderous applause that would shake the sunlight, the moonlight, and even the wind. Regrettably, this time there was no applause at all. Dee turned first as if moving his head to catch the sound of the wind, then angled his eyes upward. In the last row of seats on the northern side was a man with his hair pulled back in a ponytail. He wore a leather cape over a reddish floor-length coat. "Nice of you to come. Thought maybe I was going to have to go get you." Grinning from ear to ear, he said, "I'm Isaac Nausea. I'm a drifter and a warrior. I've always wanted to meet the great Dee we hear so much about all over the frontier." "Who hired you?" "Who hired?" "Who hired you?" "Why, Baron Mitterhaus. I'm sure you must have heard of him. He was a big deal back in the day, with 200 villages and 148 dams under his thumb in these parts. The first Mitterhaus was attacked and slain by the lousy farmers, but the one who took his place prides himself on his hidden power." "He's not anyone I've been hired to deal with." "So why is he gunning for you, you wonder? On account of you're just so damn good-looking?" "Nah, just kidding. It's not you I've got business with. It's the girl." "Why?" "Damned if I know," Nausea replied, shrugging his shoulders. His ponytail swayed. "But if a frontier noble went to all the trouble of hiring me and the rest to catch her, he's probably got a damn good reason. So, if you'll keep out of this, I won't mess with you. Just tell yourself you barely know her." From the start, she'd been someone he barely knew. But if someone had been able to peer into his mind at that moment, they'd undoubtedly have seen something quite interesting. The man whose beauty shamed the very sunlight stared silently at the other man. A heartbeat later, Nausea leapt out of his seat like a shot from a gun. "Well, surprise, surprise. I'd heard Dee was a loner through and through. Since when do you side with a woman that's got nothing to do with you?" "I get it. She hired you, did she?" Nausea's tall frame trembled fiercely. "Now that's a real hook you've got in your eye. I've come across a ton of assholes saying they've been through hell and back, but you're the real deal. It'll be an honor to fight you." "What happened to the people in this town?" Nausea furrowed his brow. The hunter's gorgeous, steely voice had suddenly changed to the hoarse tones of a geezer. "You practicing your ventriloquism or something?" "Well, as for the townsfolk, my pet doggy got 'em." "They were gobbled up?" "Pretty much. My buddy only needs to eat once a month. but you wouldn't believe how much he packs away. Sold everything from cyborg horses to house cats. In the meantime, Stagecoach bolted. If it weren't for that, we'd have lured that girl in here with you. Not a problem, though. Sorry, but you're gonna drown and see acid in my buddy's stomach.
Here it comes,
The hoarse voice said. Dee stood there quietly. It was as if he hadn't even heard the voice. Perhaps frightened by that blossom of black ice, Nausea shouted loudly,
"Come on out, buddy."
Dee's eyes reflected something white gushing from the man's mouth. A shadow passed across the sun. In midair, the form spread like a pink parasol. The umbrella looked to be more than 30 feet across, and a split second before its lower rim could touch the ground behind the hunter, there was a silvery flash from Dee's back. The blade he drew slashed at least 6 feet into the thing, and then Dee bounded into the air. He landed a good 6 feet from the rim of the umbrella.
"Not good."
An urgent tone from the vicinity of his left hand told him. Dee's body was tinged with white. The brim of his traveler's hat, the hem of his coat, and more than anything the blade of his sword were giving off a whitish smoke. The instant the umbrella was caught, a transparent liquid had poured like rain from inside it. It was acid strong enough to melt the steel blade of the hunter's sword.
"That thing, it's his stomach."
The left hand whispered.
"And that acid could dissolve iron. You do well to avoid it."
Dee discarded his sword. Before him was a rippling mass of digestive organs the size of a small bog, which quickly began giving off the same white smoke. From a distance, Nausea called out, "I should expect as much from the man known as Dee. Will we take each other down now or call it a draw?" He ended in a cry of pain. A needle of stark wood, hurled by Dee, had pierced the white smoke, and Nausea. You son of a... I can't believe you." As he groaned in a tone of astonishment and despair, the pale pink ground rose up. Leaping more than 15 feet away from the thing bearing down on him like a tsunami, Dee went for the dagger on his hip with his right hand. The white smoke suddenly pulled back. As it was sucked into the theater seats with surprising speed, it called to mind a deflating balloon. There was no sign of Nausea.
"You threw a second needle at him, but it missed all his vitals. He's not too shabby either."
Sniffing loudly, the hoarse voice continued.
"From the scent of blood, I think you might have nailed him in an artery. He won't be moving for a while. But if Midaraz of all people is gunning for her, the ghost sure must have a hell of a secret."
Jamming his left hand against the brim of his traveler's hat, Dee charged toward where Nausea had been. His running speed was so great, it seemed as if he flew there. Blood had spilled on the floor, and Dee's eyes followed a trail of splotches to a narrow exit. He headed for it without hesitation. The hunter's left hand shifted from the hat to the hem of his coat, where it coughed and sputtered as it said,
"As always, you're a hard master for your left hand. You're gonna make me get rid of all this strong acid, too?"
It quickly continued.
"What's wrong? Snap out of it."
One hand still braced against the stone wall, Dee was slowly sinking toward the floor. His back quaked, and a massive bloody spot on the floor spread like a crimson blossom.
"Poison blood?"
The hoarse voice said in a stuffy tone, holding its breath. Less than a second later, the next glob of blood flew, bringing a gory flower into bloom on one of the seats. First part, end.